Hello, welcome everybody. Hey, it is Monday, and today we are really excited, Mark Ellwood and I, to talk about more time for selling and how you can increase your sales productivity. And Mark is going to get us started off. Mark, do you want to share your
Thanks,
screen?
thanks, Penny, all the way here from Toronto, Canada. Well, we're talking about efficiency and productivity, and I got my start in this whole realm way back as a paper boy. And if you delivered papers, you had to be on time. You had to put the weekend inserts into the main paper. That was a bit of a productivity challenge. So when I was 11, that's when I got my start in the whole productivity business. And quite a number of years later, I became a productivity consultant after I invented the time quarter, a small electronic device. You can see here, I'm using it. And the time quarter allows you to keep track of the time you spend working on different activities. So corporate clients hired me to find out how their sales reps are spending their time. We send these devices out to people. They track their time for a couple of weeks, and then the data comes back, and I analyze the data. We're going to talk about some of that in a little bit. So I've got 30 years of experience and hundreds of thousands of hours. We know a lot about how sales reps spend their time. My colleague today is Penny Zenker. Take it away, Penny.
So my name is Penny Zenker, and I am, yes, a focusologist, as it says. So what that means is that I help people to focus on the 20% that's going to make 80% of the difference. And I know you've heard this before through the Pareto principle, but through my experience as an entrepreneur, owning my own IT business and selling it to a multi-million-dollar business, growing it to a multi-million-dollar business, and selling it to a public company, as well as working for large organizations and coaching companies all over the world. That's where I am at my best, is helping people to focus on what's important and what's most important to get their results. So I'm excited to be with you guys today. And Mark, I just want to edify him a little bit. He is amazing, especially with these thousands of hours that he has through this time quarter and these time studies. The insights that he's gained through that can support you are huge. So I'm excited that you're here today, and buckle up, and here we go.
Okay, well, let's talk about being a sales rep. So if you're managing a sales force, or if you're a sales rep yourself, we think there's basically just three things you need to have to be a sales rep. You need good selling skills. You need product knowledge. That is, what are the products you're selling and services you're selling, and do you know them inside out? But you also need expertise in activity management. That's what we're talking about today. Now, if you think about the sales functions you need to do, the first part of that triad, it's really finding qualified prospects, determining customer needs, offering solutions, and closing the sale. Your sales force should be doing just those things, or again, if you're a sales rep, you should be doing those things. So the challenge is, how do you get the maximum time possible to spend just on those functions? Well, what we found is that most sales forces spend lots of time on lots of other things. And so when a sales manager says, well, I expect my people to be selling 70% of the time, what we found is that's not realistic, because there's all the other stuff you have to do. And so let me take you through what we've learned over the years with a pie chart that shows time per week. Now, I'm actually going to save the best for last, which is the pure selling time. That ought to be your top priority. But let me take you through some of the other pies to show you what actual selling time looks like. So this is thousands of hours of data. Typically, sales reps work 46 to 48 hours per week. That includes a little bit of personal time. And so here we go. Planning is the first category. So that's certainly daily planning and figuring out what you're trying to do, but it's long-term planning as well, territory planning and prospect research. So that all falls into the category of planning your time. If you just look at planning your day as a chunk of that, it's about 2 hours per day or so. Well, the next is meetings. Everyone talks about all the meetings they go to, and sales reps are not immune to this. This tends to be mostly department meetings and of course, sales team meetings. whether they're done virtually or in person. That's about 6% of the, or sorry, 5% of the time. So next is client administration. This is sort of an oddball name for a category, but includes various things. For sure, it's processing orders fall under that. Maybe it's making changes to the client account, sort of internal changes, dealing with credit issues, maybe even following up on collections and that sort of thing. So not work that directly helps the client, but it's kind of back office work that you're doing at your end. Then we have, of course, direct client service. Now, when I talked about those four things that sales reps need to do, service wasn't on that list, but lots of sales reps find themselves having to do service functions. So that's handling complaints that come in, something went wrong with the delivery, handling the delivery itself. Sometimes it might be helping to design the product. So if you're working on a sort of custom products rather than off the shelf, there's some aspect of creating that product somehow or that service. And just generally answering queries from customers. Maybe those should get directed elsewhere, and often they are, but usually sales reps find themselves spending about 10% of their time doing service. General administration. This is a huge category. For managers, including sales managers, this can bump up to 25% of the time. This is the stuff that everybody complains about that's slowing them down. It's the internal reports, it's the internal paperwork, it's going to staff meetings, not the other department meetings. It's just filling out your travel expenses and so on. It just keeps adding up. Internal queries from other departments. And if you're going to try and become more productive, it's probably reducing the time in that area. Travel, well, this is pre-COVID, so travel time is considerable and probably will be post-COVID as well as people get out to meet their clients and customers. It's a necessary part of what you need to do. There's breaks. So when we measure time, we're measuring the entire day if someone's working out of an office, home office, or at their main location. They're probably taking some breaks. So we include that as well. And it's usually just about 3 hours per week. So not a whole lot. We've got some miscellaneous time. This is just oddball stuff that doesn't show up anywhere else. Maybe there was an office party. Maybe you had to fix a flat tire, get the car serviced or something. So just there's some stuff that we don't tend to capture. Well, what's left? That's the pure selling time, and it's only 23% of the time. So this is calling your prospects, it's meeting with them, it's sending them information or sending them emails, and that's the reality. It's only 23%. Now, the top selling reps can push that higher through a number of different techniques that they use, time management, and maybe their organization and their managers are making it easy for them so they can get up to 30 to 35%. But this is an average overall, and so the real challenge here is to take the time from all the other pies and move it here. Penny's probably got a couple of thoughts to add on that. Penny, your perspective on this pie chart and what it tells us.
Well, I think what I'd like to point out here is that a lot of people are probably shaking their head like, yeah, I know I need to be spending more time selling. A lot of the people, I had this one client who was frustrated when we looked at and did a time study like you talk about where he's actually spending his time, and he was surprised. So I think a lot of people might be surprised at how little time they actually spend selling, and how important it is that they find the techniques that help them to be able to increase that piece of the pie. Because at the end of the day, going back to the 80-20 is you don't make the sales if you're not making the contacts, right? If you're not making those sales calls. So that's just what I wanted to point out there.
Sure. Well, let's make this a little bit interactive. We've got an exercise for you. If you're watching this as a recording, you can do this on your own. So we're going to turn it over to Penny and give you a little exercise to think about how you spend your time, your activities, and where you want to go. Over to Penny.
Awesome. So what I'd like you guys to do right now is to take a piece of paper and draw a line right down the center of it. And what I'd like you to do is on the left-hand side is to write down what you did yesterday. So you can put yesterday as the top title. And then on the other side, you're going to put actually what your sales goals are, let's say. Or any goals, right? If you're not a salesperson, but you're attending this anyway because you want more time for whatever it is that you do, then you're going to put whatever your goals are there or what you're reviewed by in your performance review. So write down, take just, I'm going to set my timer and give you a minute, minute and a half to write down everything that you did yesterday. Just write it all down. Just think about what you did yesterday. And if you're really like missing it and you're not sure what you did yesterday, do the best you can to recreate a typical day. Maybe you know what it is you're doing today, but everything that you did yesterday, go ahead and write that down. I'll give you a minute to do that. Give you another 30 seconds to finish that up. Okay, start wrapping it up on that side. And then I'll give you 1 minute on the other side to write down what you need to be doing in order to reach those goals. What is it that you're going to be evaluated on your performance and what you need to do in order to reach that level of performance? Go ahead and write everything down in that category of what you need to be doing. We'll give you a minute to do that. Another 30 seconds. Okay, let's stop there. Now, ideally, right, we'd like to share and have you just look at it for a minute and see where's the gap. What did you do yesterday? This is sort of a mini time study, right? When we go, Mark's process is much more in depth and gives you 14 days worth so that you can really see where you're spending the time. But this gives you a clear picture that there's a gap. Do you see that there's a gap between what you're actually doing and what you need to be doing? And giving that more awareness and attention is crucial to you being able to increase that piece of the pie that you spend on selling. So, Mark, do you have any comments on how that looks for you, or anything else you want to add to that?
Well, just this idea, whether you use a time quarter to track your time or whether you write stuff down, uh, it's that sort of whole idea of doing self-diagnostics. And the more you can get a handle of your activities, the better you can understand how you can do better. You know, you think about someone running a marathon and they go out and they time themselves, sure. But there's lots of other diagnostics you can look at when you're doing running, the type of food you're eating, your heartbeat, your, pace per minute, and so on. So diagnostics is an excellent tool for improving performance.
Absolutely, absolutely. So go ahead and, in the chat box, go ahead and just put in there some of the realizations that you have. And let's just read some of those out. Right. You really get to see the difference, which you weren't aware of before, right? Increases awareness. Thank you. You didn't realize how off the two of them were. Absolutely. What else are you seeing, Mark?
Well, just a little bit of sort of self-flagellation. Don't beat yourself up about this. You know, I should have done this. I'm not where I want to be. That's okay. You're here. You're watching this, this webinar, and you're looking to improve yourself. So that's good. Don't beat yourself up about this stuff.
I'm hearing, I'm generally so caught up in the weeds that I'm not thinking about the goals as much as I need to be thinking about them. So that's such a common thing, is that we're so caught up in the day to day that we're not thinking in terms of outcomes as much as we need to and could be. So that has to be the orientation of the start of your day every day to help you stay focused on that 20%.
And
So
that
anyway, thank you guys for your participation. So Mark, do you want to bring us to the next section?
Well, that what Penny just said takes us to the next session. This whole idea of getting caught up in the weeds, and people say, "Yeah, that's fine, but I'm overwhelmed." We wanted to give you some tips today about what top performing sales reps do, and there's a number of them. So we had to be a little bit selective here. It starts with goal setting. Are your goals really clear and measurable? And so we have an exercise on that. We'll do that on another workshop. But I wanted to talk about, once you've got your goals established, how do you spend your time on your high priority tasks? So let me give you a kind of a unique formula for planning your day. And you might say, oh yeah, I plan my day all the time. Well, here's a formula you haven't heard of before. You might have heard of the idea of looking at um, sort of urgent and important activities. And that's a great model when you look back. The problem is it's hard to plan for urgent activities. You don't know what's going to come up later on today. So you can't use that as a planning tool. It's better as a diagnostic tool. So here's the planning tool that I recommend. Think about all the stuff you're going to do today and plan out your day. Start with a blank slate. Well, of course, but you've got a blank slate, not just of paper, but imagine as if you had no meetings to go to today, no appointments, or tomorrow, I should say. So no appointments, no emails, no meetings, nothing. Start with a blank slate and ask yourself, this is the magic question. Ask yourself, if I had nothing to do today or tomorrow, what would I do to affect my results a month from now? So you've got a blank slate. You have to ask yourself, what would I do to affect my results a month from now? It's probably for your sales force, it's going to be things like doing some territory planning, making some sales appointments, following up on previous calls, and preparing a quote or a proposal. Those are the big things that will affect your results a month from now. Well, you can't do all of them. Maybe you can't finish that quote in its entirety because you need some input from another department or something like that. But you can at least do the outline for the quote, or cut and paste one that you've done before and start to fill in some of the details. So that's what you can finish today. For sales managers, for instance, you want to hire a new person, a new sales rep. You can't do the entire hiring process in a day, but you can post the job, or you can review some resumes and so on. That's what you can finish. So you want to block your time off for those things, because you're not going to get the whole day for these. Just block off what's the time that's most productive for you. Maybe it's 11 till 12 in the morning, or 1 to 3 in the afternoon, or something like that. So block your time and write it down. This becomes your to-do list, or at least the start of your to-do list. So these are your A priorities. These are the things that affect your results a month from now. You're going to block some time for them. You're going to think about what's going to happen a month from now and start with a blank slate. Now, later on, you'll fill in the other stuff, what I call the B responsibilities and the C requirements. So the responsibilities, that's all some of the things in the pie chart, some of those internal activities that you needed to do, calling other departments, or helping design that product or service. the requirements are lower priority than that. That's filling out your expense report or filling out a report and so on. Those need to be done eventually, but maybe not today. But you focus on the important stuff first. And someone said, oh, okay, so this is what we do when we've done all that other stuff. No, this is what you plan for first. Maybe it's not the first thing you do in the morning, but you got to plan for these high priority activities and start off with them. So we could do an exercise on that. And so what you can do is take 2 minutes and write down what are your A priorities for tomorrow, not the B's and the C's. You'll get to those eventually, and you'll need to fill those out on your to-do list as well. But this is just the top priority, A priorities. So take maybe a minute to a minute and a half and write those down. I'll use a time quarter to record that time. Away we go. So another 20 seconds or so. You can stick a couple of your answers in the chat section again, and we'll talk about those. So here's one that I hear a lot. I need to clean up my workspace and organize my home office. Sure, that's something that needs to be done, and you better take care of that, but that's not going to affect your results a month from now. So it's on your list, but it's not your highest priority item. So here's another one. Call some prospects regarding our new product line. Well, we didn't talk about, and that's what you want to be doing for sure. We didn't talk about goal setting today, but as you set your long-term goals, that is, you want to increase your business by 20%, or for your entire sales force, if you're a sales manager, similarly, you're looking to increase sales by 5% over the next year. So just as you set those long-term measurable goals, so your daily to-do list can be measurable as well. So it's not, I'm going to call some prospects regarding our new product line, but rather I'm going to make 10 prospect phone calls regarding our product line. Now, maybe you don't get through to them all, but at least you made those attempts, and you're going to leave a voicemail message. You're going to follow up with an email or something like that. Here's another one. Work on my social media account. Well, if social media selling is important to you, then indeed that's something you want to work on, because that's going to make a difference a month from now. But similarly, you need some measurability. What on your social media account can you actually finish today? Let's say you're going to post a new article. So, write the article and finish that, or just do an outline for the article, or do some of the research for it. Maybe you want to post a new video, but you're not quite sure, what to do yet. Well, create an outline for the video, which is recommended, and maybe you don't shoot it today or tomorrow, but at least you can schedule when you want the shooting done. So you need to, I want to create a webinar, because I'm going to, I sell via webinar and attract a lot of prospects to that. Similarly, you can't do all that in one day, and that's something that indeed affects your results a month from now. But break that down into little chunks. I'll turn it over to Penny to comment in a moment, but here's the thing about a to-do list. It affects your past, your present, and your future, not in that order. It affects the future. So this is my to-do list. This is what I'm going to do tomorrow. So that gives you a plan for the future. As you're working throughout the day, you look at it and you say, this is what I need to be doing in the present right now. I've got these items that I haven't covered yet. And the past, well, everybody goes home from work and says, oh, what I get done today. If you have a to-do list with measurable chunks that you can check off, I wrote the outline for the webinar, I contacted 10 prospects. Those are things you can check off and at least get a sense of satisfaction that you've checked all those items off on your to-do list. So to sum up, think about starting with a blank slate and thinking about what affects your time or your results a month from now, then fill in all the other stuff. Penny, what's your experience being with coaching people on to-do lists and long-term impact of their activities?
Well, I think I'm gonna back up, a step back from to-do lists because the way that I use it, right? And I think it's important to see that there are lots of different methods out there, and the key is to find the one that works for you. But as you said, is to be able to align those goals and the activities that you're doing today so that you're being future oriented. So when I step back and I do my planning and block, like you said earlier, I will identify strategic time blocks that I'm going to spend on those, let's say these A priority items that are going to impact me in a month or 3 months or 6 months. And I might have Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for instance, I might have 2 hours blocked for business development, let's say. And so I may not know exactly what I'm going to do every day for the next month that I have scheduled that block, but that block is reserved for the most strategic items that I need to accomplish. So that's kind of your future element, right? And I plan that in. And then what I do is that every week I take a look at my calendar, and like you said, there's different milestones, different actions that you're going to take towards, let's say it's your social media that you mentioned before, and there's that outline, and then there's a post, and then there's maybe including some other people in the post and making some comments on other people's posts and so forth. Lots of different actions that you might be doing as part of that campaign. Then you can individually every day identify, well, this week I'm going to write the article or write the overview and the draft on this day. I'm going to then edit it on this day, and then I'm going to post it on this day or whatever it is, and you can plan them out. So that's the way I sort of do my planning. And then that's kind of like a weekly to-do list, and then you have the daily to-do list, which gets everything together on there. So that's kind of my perspective on how to balance those different ABCs that you talked about.
What we found in the time management world is that there's no one technique that everybody ought to use. Everybody does their own thing, and we learn from each other. However, we have found that time spent on planning is correlated with successful results. And so we got data on that. And, you want some science on this thing. That's what we found over the years. People who spend more time in planning. So however you do it, be active about how you're planning your long-term and your daily stuff. So hopefully there's a formula that's helpful to you for daily planning. Well,
One quick thing, Mark, what I want to add is I think for people to remember that it's so easy for us to be squirrel pulled away, right, into lots of different directions, especially today with everything that's going on politically, socially, right? The pandemic, the kids are at home, right? There's so many extra distractions that are around that by having this plan, it helps us to be more flexible, even though you don't think it does, but it also helps us to be more purposeful and help us to get back on track quicker. So I think it's important for people to understand that the more chaotic the times, the more important the plan.
wise words. Well, if planning is about being sort of positively future oriented, the other is to get rid of the non-value added time. Now, this might sound a little tactical, and it is to some degree, when we talk to organizations, there are lots of structural things that organizations can do to give sales forces more of the time they need. So today we're just talking about a couple of the tactical ones, and we've chosen just a couple. And one of them is unnecessary email. Oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed by email. I got 100 emails an hour and so on. I went to the bathroom and I came back and there were 30 more emails. Well, so we've measured that. And so the activities that people track on the time porter device, there's email everywhere. So if you're contacting prospects, then there's some email involved with that. And when you're dealing with another department, there's email and so on. But we've measured a separate activity, not for all of our studies, but for many of them, which was unnecessary email. And the participants themselves determined what this meant. It was stuff that they just shouldn't have been receiving. Well, email, when it started 20 years ago, was meant to be the great, technological advance, and it has been. And there's so many wonderful things about it, except for the unnecessary stuff. And it's overwhelming. 3.3 hours per week. We measured it, and that's what people tell us that they're spending on. So it's all those things they got copied on that they shouldn't have been, and stuff from head office and so on. Some of that's necessary from head office, but a lot of it's not. And someone from head office says, well, we'll just send out a little notification about this. It's just a short notification. Well, nothing adds up to much, but everything adds up to a lot. One little email doesn't add up to much, but 10 of them do. And that's the problem. You keep getting overwhelmed by these. Okay, so how can you work on your own email? How can you be proactive? And again, this is more tactical than strategic for the organization, but there are things that you can do. You can cut the glut of email. So how do you do that? One paragraph, one idea. Keep your emails short as much as you can. If you find that you're giving a lot of details and you're having to rewrite the thing and so on, back and forth, it's probably time for something different. It's a phone call, it's a Zoom call, it's a meeting if you can arrange a meeting or something. But keep it short to one paragraph and one idea as much as you can. You know, even the one idea, oh, and also, it should be of just about one thing. So that's one technique to try. Get yourself off of email mailing lists. And you might say, oh, well, so and so sends me these communication tips or these time management tips or leadership tips or whatever. I say, look, if you want to learn about that subject, be active about it and go to a seminar, go to a workshop, or hire us to do some training, however you want to do it. But really, the emails that you're getting on the communication tips largely, adverse advertising to hire that person. And maybe there's a couple of good gems in there. What I found in particular that I was getting overwhelmed by these things, so I just cut them all off. And sometimes in the response where it says, reason that you want to stop receiving these, I'll write a little note. I'll say, don't need your regular email, the newsletters, but keep me on your list because I want to stay in touch with the person and not insult them a whole lot. So get yourself off of some of those lists. Now, some of those are internal. You're on internal distribution lists, and you could say to the person, it's okay, I don't need to be on this. I'm getting this information some other way or when I need it. And that's fine to do as well. Don't tell stories. So you send out an email to someone that says, last week I asked you for an update on our X2 product line, and you said you'd get that back to me by Friday, but on Friday I was out of the office. And then on Monday I asked you to blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on. If there's a long story, it's just not necessary. The request should be, could you please send me a copy of the X2 product line details or something? But watch out for the stories. You can always assume that maybe something went wrong at their end. Maybe they had a sick day or a funeral to go to or something that prevented them from getting back to you. So those long stories just aren't necessary. Pick up the phone or pick up or send them a brief text and say, can we talk or something like that. Don't correct behavior. Now, if somebody asks you, hey, got any advice for me on this? You're welcome to do that. But correcting behavior, and you've all seen it in emails, is just not the way to do it. Because again, somebody might have something that got in their way that prevented them from doing what you wanted, and this can can get very passive aggressive. Would you kindly next time refrain from such and such? Oh gosh, who wants to receive that kind of thing? So again, if you're asked for advice, great, but don't try and correct behavior. Do that through proper performance meetings and so on. Use the right medium. So maybe instead of uh, using email, again, you're going to pick up the phone or you're going to do it in a meeting or something. But if it's taking you a lot of time to write an email, maybe it's not the right medium. And the last one, and there are others, by the way, respond right away when you're in email time. So if you've decided that this hour-long chunk is to respond to emails, all right, well, respond to somebody right away. Don't just keep, delaying and delaying, because that's going to end up in your inbox forever. Penny has talked about this a lot as well. I'm sure she's got a couple of extra tips. Penny, other perspectives on email?
Sure. So one of my pet peeves is that subject field that is the same subject field like 2 months later, like let's have lunch, and now it's got like a business purpose and it's morphed into a bunch of other things. So change the subject title every time you send an email so it's really clear what's in the email. That is something that I is a pet peeve of not knowing what's in the email because it doesn't reflect what's actually in the email. Another thing that you can do with subject lines is use it to get people's attention, to let them know when it's due. So maybe as an organization, you can identify a short codes for need response tomorrow, right? So might be NRTM so that someone knows when you need the response by. So if it's not urgent and you can say next week NW, right? NRNW, then that person can put it aside if it's not urgent and deal with the more urgent things first. So, those are just a couple of, these are great tips that Mark's giving. We could go on and on with email tips, but those are two really great ones that I love is really just better using the subject field.
So continuing on with non-value added time, how do top performing sales reps spend their time? Well, they reduce non-value added time. We talked about email. We've often asked people at the beginning of our time studies, we give them a short questionnaire to fill out, and we say, what things get in the way of your productivity? So, thousands of responses over the years. The number one response is paperwork and administrative tasks. That's what people say is slowing them down. Okay, so what do we know about that? Well, we talked about that large administration category, which was about 22% of the time. And within that, there's something called paperwork and administration, which is a whopping 5.9 hours per week for sales reps.
Wow.
If you're a sales manager, it's up there as well. Lots of sales managers are being burdened by this stuff as well. Penny, looks like you had a comment there.
I just said, wow. I mean, that's almost a day a week that's lost to paperwork and administration, right? That's a lot.
It's huge, and we call it paperwork. A lot of people have gone paperless, so it's kind of a general category, but there's
Right.
administration in there as well, and it's just a collection of different types of reports and so on. Okay, so how do you deal with those? Again, these can be somewhat structural and strategic, but there's a couple of things that you can do as an individual. There's the burden of all that paperwork slowing this person down. Um, so you can delegate, delete, automate, streamline, and ask just very quickly on those. Um, Delegate. Now, lots of sales people say, I don't have anyone to delegate to. As a sales manager, you've got support staff, maybe an assistant if you're lucky, or even a sales rep themselves. So you've got someone to delegate to, but sales reps go, I don't have anyone to delegate to. Well, creative sales reps and smart ones do. Maybe it's back to another department where this belongs. Maybe it's hiring your kid or using someone from Fiverr or something like that to help you. Now there's confidentiality issues, but who could you hire or use for not a whole lot of dollars to help you so that you can earn the high dollars that you deserve? So look for some opportunities there. You can delete, that is, get rid of this administrative task or paperwork entirely. That's a little tough when you're part of an organization that's requiring you to do this stuff. But nonetheless, look around. What aspects here could I delete, or could I make a proposal to delete to the organization, because it's just non-value added time. And the organization may not realize how much time you're spending on this thing. That's why we go out and measure this stuff and tell them what it is. And once you've got that business case in hand, then your credibility is improved. You can automate. Well, again, sometimes that's a structural issue, but even as an individual, what aspects can you automate? If you're writing proposals all the time, can you find a way to automate those by just cutting and pasting? And you probably already do, but what other aspects of your regular tasks that you're doing over and over could be automated somehow? There's an app somewhere, there's a spreadsheet, there's a program, there's a tool that you can use somewhere to help on that. You can streamline. Again, this is more of a strategic issue, but when your manager asks you, and could be a sales manager, your director's asking you for something, or as a sales rep, your manager is asking you for some data, are you spending hours and hours collecting this information? Or do you go back to them and say, what's the essence of what you really need to know here? Do you need to know how many new accounts we penetrated in the last month? Or do you need to know the name of all of them and the details and how many products we sold and so on? No, maybe they just need to know what the total number was or the total dollar amount was. So that's streamlining that request to some degree. And lots of people complain about those requests from senior management that are always slowing them down. And the last thing is just to ask. Ask your manager in turn or your director, do we need this? Can we eliminate this? Look at all the time we're spending on this. Penny, over to you on other aspects of sort of paperwork and administrative tasks.
Well, I just wanted to share a quick story. So I was working with a company, and they were looking for areas to streamline and reduce the amount of administrative tasks. And you know, recording time and expenses is a huge item for many companies and many sales reps who are trying to manage these long lists of expenses and whatnot. And so for this one organization, there was a suggestion by one of the staff, and you had said, you know, why not bring a suggestion? So don't be afraid to do that. He had a suggestion that, why don't you give us a per diem, an amount per day when we're traveling that will not have to be reported as expenses, so that as we need it, we don't have to bother putting some of the small things on the expense reports that you know that they're going to have when they're traveling. Provides a little bit more trust too in the people that you're working with, that they are going to, you know, manage their expenses, but you're also giving them a cap. And what that did was it saved a tremendous amount of time for each of the individuals who were traveling for the sales team, that they didn't have to report and collect every single receipt and then write down every single receipt. So there were hours and hours that were saved that could be spent directly on selling. So bring your great ideas, because the organization may have done things for a long time a certain way, but they might be open to looking at things differently.
Well, we could turn this over to you guys. What drags you down, and how do you deal with it in terms of paperwork and administrative tasks? And maybe take a minute to fill out those questions, and then we can comment on that before we finish up for today.
Somebody just popped in the chat and said, yes, the expense part is a huge time waster for them. And they hate it, he said. They hate doing it.
Maybe another
Oh,
30 seconds. Go ahead.
I was going to say this one. I saw somebody said that they scan them quickly, just as they take a picture of it quickly, just as they do it, and then that enables them to send it off to somebody to do for them.
Right. Okay, we'll finish this section here. Here's one last one. Entering data into this CRM system, CRM, customer relationship management. Well, look, first of all, you should have one. To keep track of your clients and prospects and so on. So I've been using one for, gosh, decades it seems, and it's a terrific way of keeping track of clients. Now, one of the challenges is you've got these systems all over the place. You might use a contact management system, but then you've also got Outlook, maybe. I send stuff. I use a mailing service to send emails, well, not emails or announcements to people only once or twice per year. So you've got all these different databases, and they may or may not talk to each other. But on the main one, someone was complaining, it takes a long time to enter the information. If that's slowing you down, then that system needs some work or updating or whatever. So yes, you should be keeping track of your clients and prospects. There is value in that. It's not just for your sales manager or director, but there's value for you as an individual sales rep or as a sales manager. You should have your people doing this regularly, but it needs to be a simple system. And maybe you don't need to have every conversation written down in detail. Leave lots of little abbreviations. I learned way back LMTC. That was left message to call. And that was enough. I knew what I was calling about, and I didn't have to write all that down. So use abbreviations and such. But so use your contact management system, but don't let that drag you down. That can be a real time gobbler. Anything to add to that, Penny?
Yeah, somebody here just wrote that they'll do recorded messages. So and then they'll attach it to the item so that it's not necessarily a written one, but they'll just hit a recording. So that's a good idea.
Great. Lots of good input today. We're going to uh, finish up with some next steps. So here's a few. Certainly plan your day and create a to-do list. Take yourself off of all those email lists and follow some of the other advice we gave about emails. Delegate your paperwork or eliminate it. And conduct a time study for yourself or your team. I'll talk about that briefly, and then Penny will follow up. Uh, After you do the time study, well, so what? Follow that up with coaching, training, and process improvement. The process improvement, as I said, is more of the strategic level, and the coaching and training helps teams and helps individuals. We had a couple of people use, there's the time quarter, a little picture of it. I'll uh, hold it up again so it looks like this.
Mhm.
It's got different buttons. You press a button every time you begin a new activity. Dead simple to use, maybe a little less complicated to use than a doorbell. And it's better than an app because it's a separate device, because it's always giving you feedback, because it lasts for 200 hours, whereas your phone's going to turn off. And you don't have the ergonomic problems of going in and out of an app. So we found people really like it. Here's a couple of comments. Employees are actually having fun with the time quarter. This was the government unionized frontline service workers, and they were really keen on it. So that worked well. Here's somebody, thanks much, a very enjoyable and interesting experience. Want to see the results and tweak accordingly. And finally, during the pandemic, working with you and using the time quarter produced the greatest positive impact on our business. So that's some thoughts about the time quarter, the way we do that. We work with, say, a Salesforce, determine the list of activities, somewhere between 25 and 40, program the devices, send them out to people all over the world, take them through an orientation session, and then off they go tracking their time for a couple of weeks. And then the devices come back and we analyze the results. The promise is we can show organizations how their employees can improve time spent on their top priority activities by 1 hour per day. And that's a lot. I'll finish there. Penny, anything to add?
Yeah, I can't stress enough how important it is. These awareness tools are so important. If you're going to go on a diet, they have you write down all the calories and depending on the diet, the macro and the micro and all these different things. But they track the water that you're drinking. The tracking and getting awareness of what is actually going on is important. And It's the same with finances. We create a budget, right? We're tracking where we're spending our money and comparing it to where we want to be so we can see what's in the gap and we can make corrections. So it's absolutely important that we do that with our time as well, and achieving the goals that we want. I've also seen great results from people. I've taken these time studies myself because they're so valuable. And I look to do that sort of every 6 months or so to check in with myself and to see where it is I'm spending my time and give myself that heightened awareness. So whether you're an individual or you're, looking after your team, this is hugely valuable. And I want it to be clear that this is about awareness. So when you implement this with your team, it could be misconstrued that you're watching over them or whatever. Make sure that you make it clear, and we'll help you with that process, is that this is to gain awareness, and it's for personal productivity, but also to streamline things in the organization so you can really see where people are spending their time. It is so valuable.
Yeah, that thing about looking over people, we get a huge, remarkable participation rate of 94%. Why? Because the device is fun to use, gives that feedback, and all of our results are anonymous. We don't use individuals' names. So they're reassured that, okay, I can do this thing and not have to
Yeah.
worry. Okay, so you can contact us about that. So there's me, Mark Ellwood, mark at getmoredone.com. There's Penny, p10app.com. We are both on LinkedIn. We're both on Twitter. We're all over the internet. So copy down our names or contact us directly. And there's phone numbers as well. I love to talk on the phone. And I find a lot of people hide. You can't figure out how to call them. You can call me anytime. Penny's available as well. You can link up with us. So do connect that way. I'm going to go to one more slide and then come back. And of course, I'll finish up before Penny and say, spend your time on what matters most. That's my slogan. So there's us. I'll finish off there. And Penny, you can finish off the webinar for today.
All right, great. Thanks, Mark. So, my encouragement to everybody is make an appointment with us. Get in touch with us, send us an email, or I'll give you my calendar link. You can go to profitwithpenny.com and you can make an appointment with me, or email Mark and you can make an appointment with him, so that you can see what could this time study do for you. Start there. It's the best place to start. You got some great tips on things you can do yourself. And if you want to do something more organized and see how you compare to various other people in your industry or in your area, those comparisons can be really valuable, and we can really support you with that. So make a meeting and let's just talk about how it could support you and what you could do with it. And what I want to do to close out this meeting today is just tell you a little story that I often tell when I'm doing my keynotes and whatnot. There was this guy who every day he would bring to work a tuna sandwich. And every day he would complain about this tuna sandwich. He'd say, "Oh, tuna, I hate tuna. Are you kidding me? Oh, the smell of tuna is driving me crazy. Oh, I can't stand tuna again." Finally, his buddy got really frustrated with him and said, "Dude, what's up? Have your wife make you something else." And he goes, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Turkey, roast beef, something else." And the guy goes, "I don't know what you mean. I'm single and I live alone." Don't be that guy. That's what I'm saying. And for those of you who didn't get it yet, because some of you are like, ha, 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 and some of you, are like, what? He's making his own sandwich. And very often we know what to do, but we don't do what we know. So we've got to take ownership for putting these things into practice so that we can accomplish the things that we want. Don't get caught up in learned helplessness. Own your results and get in relationship with your results. And the best way to do that is by tracking your time. Thank you, everybody.
We're going to sign off now. Thanks, everyone, for attending. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.